conversation around voting, and I think I'm going to turn my video on. All right, wonderful. All right, Sal, take it away. Once again, good evening, everyone. I am Pastor Scott Onqué, the Policy Director for Faith in Place, as well as the Faith in Place Action Fund. And tonight we're doing a Faithful Citizens workshop around the equity and voting. And so I knew I couldn't do this alone, and we really wanted to talk to some faith leaders tonight to bring them on board to discuss what they are doing around voting. And so we have the president of Pastors Organized with Equity and Respect. That is Dr. Michael A. Jones, number 2. We also have
the first,
I'm sorry, number 1, the first. And then we also have Reverend Roosevelt Watkins of Bethlehem Star Missionary Baptist Church, but also the president of Pastors United for Change, which is also known as P.U.C. We're glad to have him. We also have Pastor Walter Turner, who is the pastor of the Spiritual Light Missionary Baptist Church. And he is also the president of the Baptist Ministers Conference of Chicago and vicinity. And then we also have Pastor Rutledge, who's actually with the election board, and he will be with us tonight. And so again, thank you to our Faithful Citizens Workshop, and our comms support is Sal, who's our Faith in Place Action Fund media coordinator. And so again, thank you for being a part of our workshop. We can move forward. Okay, so real quick, what we're going to discuss is who we are and why we vote, environmental justice. We're going to talk about engage as a faithful citizen, voting eligibility and legislative accountability, and then the congregational efforts, and then how we can get the vote out. Right. Move forward. All right, so I introduced our panelists, and so again, Faith in Place is the organization, diverse people of all faith leading the environmental movement towards justice. And that is our goal tonight, to move the environmental movement towards justice. And then Faith in Place's mission is Faith in Place empowers Illinois people of all faiths to be leaders in caring for the earth, providing resources to educate, connect, and advocate for healthier communities. And so why do we advocate? We advocate so that we can make sure that people are informed. Also that our legislators know that we are concerned about our environment. We're concerned about our climate. We're concerned about healthier communities. We're concerned about people of faith and their outcomes. And so we do all of our efforts with our program areas to advocate towards justice. So there's much, advocacy is defined as any action that speaks in favor or recommends or argues for a cause, supports or defends or pleads for a cause. And so people of faith are more, are powerful. Okay, you can go ahead, Sal, that was fine. That was fine, we could that's fine. There's only so much that one can do as individual houses of worship. We must change policies and systems to create a world that we want with clean air, clean water, and healthy communities. And so this is the backdrop. Many people know about Faith in Place, but if this is your first time hearing about Faith in Place, this is what we're all about. So people of faith are a powerful force for change, and we know that. I'm not preaching to the choir tonight. I know that people of faith can bring about the change that we want to see in these United States, and then also in the state of Illinois, and then our surrounding cities and communities. And so here's a picture of us as we advocated about justice. We went down to Springfield last November, actually in March. We went down to Springfield in March, right before we had our shutdown from COVID, and we met with our legislators there in the center. You have Representative Slaughter, Justin Slaughter, and you have Representative Nicholas Smith and Representative Marcus Evans, two of your great representatives on the south side of Chicago. And those are some of the members that went down on buses from different communities. We had a wonderful time. And just to give a plug real quick, I'm going to actually post it in the chat a little later, but we're planning a new a virtual advocacy day for November the 12th, where we'll have thousands of people come on a platform for Zoom so that we can have meetings with our legislators and also talk about clean energy and promote the Clean Energy Jobs Act. So look forward to that. I'll share that before we close out this evening. All right. So basically why I care: when you view the lens of social justice, environmental justice seems to intersect with the injustices that have affected people of color and the least among us the most, whether it's land or air pollution, water justice, lead pipes, food scarcity, or any other environmental issue. There must be intentional effort to correct these injustices. And that's a quote that I lead with as I continue to fight for justice. And so environmental justice, so you can get an idea, is I like to describe as a justice as an umbrella of overarching construct. It's not just talking about clean energy or climate change. It's talking about many things that fall under the umbrella of environmental justice. One of the things that I share, real quick, next slide, is really where we live, where we play, where we pray, where we go to school, where we recreate, interact with others. It means equity and distributive justice, meeting people where they are, determining what they need to be safe and healthy. And that's a quote actually from an environmentalist, Adrian Hollis, who I have opportunity to share with on panels in the past. And this work is a great undertaking, but it's definitely worthwhile. Next slide. All right, so there's various parts that make up the umbrella, including climate justice, civil rights, criminal justice, economic justice, housing justice, water justice, food justice, as well as other important issues that are incorporated into our environment. And so that's why we're talking about voting tonight, because again, when we place our votes, we want to make sure we understand that we're not just voting for one particular category. We're voting for climate justice, civil rights, criminal justice, economic justice, housing justice, water justice, food justice, and any other important issues that you feel concern you. Okay, and so one effective way to advocate for environmental justice is through voting. And that's why we're here tonight, because we want to talk about voting and how important the vote is and how we can get out the vote. And again, we want to talk to these clergy leaders on their efforts to communicate to not only their congregations, but in communities at large, because all of these representatives work in the community as well as in their church. So voting is a push for equity. Through voting, we can ensure environmental protections for communities who are most affected by the climate crisis. By championing policies and elected officials, we can protect the health of people and the environment we live in. And so all of us are going to play our part in getting the vote out. All right, so elected officials make powerful decisions that affect the environment and communities. And that's why we need to make sure the right people are not only in the White House, but all down the ballot. When we think about who's we're electing, we got to make sure that they're speaking for us. Voting is a fundamental right that needs to be exercised at every opportunity we have. And so that's why we're talking about voting tonight. All right, so the federal administration impacts on climate, just a little backdrop: environmental rollbacks, Clean Air Act, water regulations, air regulations for coal plants. These things are affecting our communities. Even right now, on the south side of Chicago, we have a company trying to move into the far south side, General Iron, and it's legislators that gave them permission to do that. And we have to make sure that we're putting the right people in office to make sure that they understand that we're not going to have dirty air or dirty water in our communities, or even regulations on coal plants, coal ash, many things that affect the people in our communities, especially people of color. And so we want to make sure that we are speaking to federal administration and the impacts they have on climate. So local impacts on climate, environmental racism is really big. When you think about environmental racism, is disproportionate impact of environmental hazards on people of color. That's the example I gave about General Iron moving from Lincoln Park, which is a whiter community, to the southeast side, which is a Black and brown community. And we know that that's just not right. So people of faith can determine what elected officials are empowered through voting and mobilizing around getting out the vote efforts. And so tonight we want to talk about who can vote. Who is eligible? Who is eligible? Well, let's talk about who's eligible. And we have some experts on the line that can add to this. So real quick, the next slide, and then I'm going to bring in Pastor Rutledge to confirm that we're on the right track. So be able to vote in the state of Illinois, you must be 18 years of older by the time of the election day. Citizens of the United States of America, resident in your district at least 30 days, register to vote by going to vote.gov register. And so, Pastor Rutledge, are you on at this time? Okay, we'll come back to him. So these.
Hello.
Hello, Pastor Rutledge.
Yes, how are
So
you?
I just covered 4 points about who's eligible to vote. I said 18 years or older, citizens of the United States, residents in your district at least 30 days, and registered to vote.
Well, let me back you up just a little bit.
Okay,
Anyone that is anybody in the state of Illinois that is 17 and will be 18 by the next general election. You know, we have our normal general elections. Most of them are in November, but we do have some one election in that cycle that may be in March. But you can be 17 and vote in the primary.
Right.
But if that primary is prior to the November, the general election. So anyone that is 17 and will be 18 by the next general election can vote.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for reiterating that. And then also the making sure that you register to vote. And we do have same-day registration in the state of Illinois. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And the thing about that is
speak more to that, please.
Yeah. Well, that is the last chance. So if you go into that polling place and you don't have your 2 pieces of ID, then you just missed out. All of the other opportunities we have, they give you a chance to get it, bring it in. But on election day, if you don't come in there with what you need, that's it. And
so what is the requirement on election day to register to vote if that's your last chance? What 2 things do we actually have?
2 pieces of ID, one of which must have your present address on it.
Very good.
Now, you can have a letter, it does not have to be picture IDs either, but it has to be 2 pieces and one of them must have your present address on it.
Very good. Now, those who are listening and watching, this is Pastor Rutledge, and he actually works for the election board. And so he is our resident expert tonight. That's why I'm referring to some questions around voting, because we want to make sure we get this right. One of the worst things that can happen is a person disqualifies themselves from voting by showing up and not having the necessary paperwork in order to vote. And
that's
again,
right.
That's a chance. And so we don't want you to, be disenfranchised from this great opportunity to express your opinion on who you want to represent you in these various offices. Very good. All right. So let's talk to our panel. We, if you don't mind, let's go around, introduce yourself again. We have Pastor Michael Jones, number 1. We have Pastor Isabel Walker. We have Pastor Walter Turner, and we were just speaking to Pastor Rutledge. And so I want to talk to you about your Get Out the Vote efforts. And so I'm going to start with you, Pastor Watkins, because I have reached out to you. And what things are you looking to do to make sure your congregations and your surrounding communities are actually getting out to vote? You got to take yourself off mute. It happens to me all the time. I still can't hear you. I'm gonna come back to you. Get your sound, Pastor Turner.
Yes, sir.
There you go. Pastor Turner and I have worked many years on the South Side, South Shore community with various organizations. And so he's a very trusted source. And so let's hear from Pastor Turner. What are you doing as far as getting the vote out and reaching out to your community as well as your congregation?
Well, first of all, Pastor Onqué, let me thank you for this opportunity and this privilege to be able to be part of this great discussion, because your proactiveness in the community, because of you being able to move down through the years beyond the walls of the church, beyond the walls of the pulpit. This allows us to begin to understand that we need to begin to engage our people, our community, by reclaiming the heritage. Uh, Voting is important because it allows us to reclaim the heritage in democracy. And I believe that has been lost because we have a double pandemic going on. We have a double pandemic going on, not just with COVID-19, but COVID-16-19. When we look at it, we've had 401 years of healthcare disparities, voter suppression. We've had social injustice on various layers, because when we even look at this pandemic that's going on in our communities, we are tested the least, but we're dying the most. And we got to get to a point of understanding that the way we can engage and deal with this profound public pandemic that we're going to have going on, we got to, number one, educate our people. Because our people feel as if their vote does not mean anything. And I believe that is a reason because of a lack of education. So it is our role. We have been sharing with different ones in our community and across the city and county, literally, that there's an education that goes with this. You need to know what is at stake. We need to, our communities need to know what we stand to lose if we do not vote. Healthcare, housing, civil justice, as well as social justice, civil rights. We need to make sure that our communities know what is at stake. So that is why it is important that we let them know the educational process means more than anything else. And then when they begin to understand the educational process, then they'll begin to understand and realize that their vote matters.
Very good. Pastor Jones, what's your take on the election process, and how are you planning to inspire people to exercise their right to vote?
Thank you again for allowing me to be a part of this panel discussion. I think that it's very important that we lift this up. As far as we're concerned, to directly answer your question, at St. Titus 1, we're in service. We're having service in-house as well as on social media, 2 platforms. And every week we are registering people right there on premises. And we're letting it be known out on social media. If anybody wants to be registered, we can do it right then and right there electronically. So we also invite the community to come out because our service is heard in the neighborhood because we have a speaker outside. So everybody knows what we're doing, and we're inviting them in. They come in, they register, or they find out what they need so that they can register, change their address, whatever. So we're working diligently on there. We're doing a lot of education around that, and we're doing a lot of information distribution regarding the importance of voting and what we stand to lose, just like we did with the census. So we're losing a lot of things, mostly because we're not being the voice that we ought to be, to at least give people information. I always say that, I can't make people do things, but I can give them the information that they can decide what they want to do with it. But that's what we're doing around the voting situation, because it's imperative that our folks exercise their voices while they can, because so many things are being snatched. You don't know what's next. So we need to do that.
Great. Pastor Watkins, you got that sound together? You ready? You got to take yourself off mute. There you go. Oh, I still can't hear you. I think you got to take yourself off Bluetooth. Pull over and take yourself off Bluetooth and put your phone on speaker. I still can't hear you. Okay, I'm gonna come back to you. Pull over and take yourself off that Bluetooth machine in that car. I understand. All right, Pastor Rutledge, how has the early voter turnout been in the state of Illinois so far?
Well, are you speaking of this one that we're in right now?
Yeah, right now, the cycle we're in, because we're right in the voting cycle right now.
Right. Let me tell you, last night I heard that in the South suburban area, they had over 500 people standing in line after 7 o'clock.
Wow.
It's unbelievable. We here down at the county, we've had more mail ballots than ever before. We're doing a fantastic job. But let me just say this, I want to add to this. I am so glad to be with these preachers and these pastors. These are some pastors that I honor and I look up to. But let me tell you something. Everybody needs to know that these pastors on this panel tonight, I can tell you this from experience, they do voter registration. They do it. We watch the numbers. I hear a lot of people talking, and I've been doing this for quite some time. I've watched people, but the pastors we have on this panel tonight, they are somebody special when we start talking about registering or getting our people registered to vote. The numbers speak. I have to say, and just let me say this. 2 years ago, we did a rally. And so they told us in our office and our surrounding areas that we wasn't doing anything. We hadn't did any registrations and we're just wasting time. When we actually looked at what had happened, I couldn't believe it. But when they told me that, I did on my own. We pulled ourselves together and we said, we want to see it. When we finished gathering up numbers with Chicago, the surrounding areas, a couple years ago, we did 750,000 new registrations.
Wow.
And I have to tell you, I was so proud and so overtaken with that because it's because of your panel. I remember one particular day they had me come on 79th Street. Roosevelt Watkins had 500 deputy registers or 500 people there. We had to get help to handle them. So I'm proud to say that this group that you have is a group of preachers that do it. They're not just talking; they're walking the walk as well.
Wonderful. Okay, so we talk about early voting, and I've heard some numbers myself that a lot of people are actually early voting. So if you are actually in line if you're in line, are you able to continue to stay in line even though the doors are actually closed?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
If you're in the line when it's time to close, one of our judges or something is scheduled to come to the back of the line and stand there. Now, they won't let anybody walk in after the hours are closed, but if you're in that line when, say, for instance, 7 o'clock, I don't care how many in there, we have to serve you.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, that's good news.
Now, if you would allow me, let me just say this too. To those that are planning to do early voting or they have their mail ballot, this is what we're not getting. We want to make sure we get across to them. If you change your mind and you want to vote, early vote, take your ballot with you. The ballot you didn't use and give it to the judge. They will allow you to vote a regular ballot. Now, if you have not received your ballot, all you have to do is go to the early voting site and they will give you an affidavit and you can vote a regular ballot if you have not received yours as of yet.
Okay.
So we got all ends covered.
Wonderful. And the last day for Sunday was actually the last day for online early registration, right? Or online registration?
Yes. Last day for registration, for voting registration online was 10/18/2020.
Okay, wonderful. Okay. Now, Pastor Turner, you can speak to this. When we think about who's on the ballot, and we're not showing any preference on, but we think about who's on the ballot, how important it is for us to make the right choice on this election cycle. And let's go down, and we can go down the ballot also, because we know that there's, the White House. But when I voted, I saw my local rep, I saw my state's attorney, so there was, I saw some areas that I can vote on that I felt make a difference in my life. How do you speak to that to your congregation as they make a choice for their?
Thank you, Pastor Onqué. And I got to give a shout out to Lamont Rutledge, who has been a vital asset to the churches, to our communities, to the various pastors. Man, Lamont, you have done an awesome job down through the years, man. And I really want to thank you so much for the work that you do.
Thank you,
Pastor
so much.
Onqué, what I have done and have shared with our community, and most definitely with my members, is I let them know who has our interests at heart.
Mhm.
I believe that is so important that we begin to put the history of those individuals who are running, those individuals who have a vested interest in our communities, that they just don't show up. They just don't show up at election time, but there is a relationship that has been built down through the years. We don't do this, we don't support them just for an election, but we support them based upon what they are doing in our community ongoing. They're not just there just coming in to just get a vote, but they're coming in to build a relationship. So what I've tried to instill in our members, look at the records, look at where they've been, look at what they've done, look at where they come from, and look at what they're looking to do, and then look at what they may be trying to take away. Whoa.
That's a
We
good
also
point.
got to look at not just what they have done or what they're going to do, but we also need to look at what they may be trying to take away from us.
Very good. Before I go to the next panelist, if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat. Your chat is located at the bottom of your screen. It has a little talking box. You can type your question into the chat. Our comms assistant, Sal, will let me know there's a question, and we will make sure the question gets to the right panelist. All right. Pastor Watkins, you have that sound together yet? I see connecting the audio. Now you're back on mute. Okay, Pastor Jones, we're gonna get Pastor Watkins in. As soon as you get your voice, just Pastor Jones, if you can take yourself off mute. I know that we don't, as 501c3s or houses of worship, we don't do personal endorsements of any candidates. But how do you inform your members on what's the best choice or what's the best vote for them?
Unfortunately, I'm gonna say unfortunately, but I'm a rebel, and I may in my sermon lift up somebody like Turner said that's trying to destroy us. By virtue of elimination, they know who's for us.
That's right. That's right.
It's imperative, as he said, to make sure that we don't just reach in there in the hat and pull out any rabbit, but we got to, on purpose, put what we need to take care of our vested interests. So I definitely agree with that. So I do a lot of educating. I do a lot of educating. It's imperative. We need to know who's a partner with our community. Again, I agree with what he said. So that's what I'm doing. And then we also try to take the slate and take a look at the slate and make sure that we lift up, without telling folks who to vote for, lift up if it's anybody that we have relationship with, that the membership know has been around, has been doing things or trying to help us out. I just remind them, we wouldn't have what we have or go where we go if, had these people not been a benefit to us. Now everybody might not be on a particular ballot, but we still got to look at who is for us, if I can say that like that. And I'm bold enough to say it on Facebook, on YouTube, on air. But come get me if you want to. But we got to make sure that we got to make sure we don't go for the okie doke.
Well,
let me stop right there.
Yeah, one of my introductory slides, I talked about all of the things that fall under environmental justice. And so, climate justice is on the ballot. We know that
that's right.
Healthcare is on the ballot. Matter of fact, democracy is on the ballot. We have to think bigger than just a personality. We got to think about what's at risk when we make our choices in these elections, and that's going all the way down from the top. If the street sweeper was on the ballot, you got to make sure that they have your vested interest when they come around the street, sweep the streets. So we have to think about how we vote and how the vote is. Yes, sir.
Let me say this. Being the president of an organization of pastors that we try to meet monthly, I also have to impress upon them, and by impressing upon them, then we're connecting with other churches, other members in the community, folks that's outside of the walls where I'm the pastor, so that they can also advocate for the changes that we need. So it's bigger than just St. Titus 1. It's a universal push to get these things taken care of, just like these other preachers are doing.
Yes, and Pastor Jones, I concur with you in wholeheartedly. It is up to us to begin to start, and I'm gonna use a word that Pastor Onqué has used. We got to start having our members to help join in with us to start advocating for change, not just with the process of voting or the voting process, but we got to begin to advocate change in policy.
That's
and
what I
in
say.
legislation.
That's what I do.
Many times the reason why our communities, let's be real, and I don't like this word minority. I'm Black. I'm sorry. Because they have taken this word minority and it has done a job to African American men.
Yep.
So
made them look small.
So we got to begin to deal with how can we advocate change in policy and in legislation so that wording can be different as we begin to engage our elected officials. And that's why we need to make sure that we let them know how they need to study those names that are on the ballot, and don't play you can't play any, mini, miny, mo with these judges.
No.
We have to be very careful that we study even the records of our judges.
I was going to get to that, Pastor Turner, about the judges, because we seldom realize how important the selection, retention of judges are.
Yeah.
Not all judges should be retained because they're not all actually fighting for us. Pastor
If you retain all of them, you're gonna keep getting what you've been getting.
Yeah.
Pastor Watkins, I still can't hear you. I don't know what's going on with your sound. Did you dial in also? You know what it is? Dial in under Zoom so your sound will be, because you're on traveling. So you're on Zoom, but you need to dial in one of those other numbers. so we can get your sound going, because we can see you, but I can't hear you. All right, wonderful. Any questions in the chat? Let's see. How can people get in? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I think our tech is working on that. All right. Everyone can make sure that you vote. Okay, we also have the, make sure that you're registered to vote by going on to vote.org if you want to do that. Any questions for our panelists before we talk about our judge selection? All right. So what things in our community are we really looking at when we think about this 2020 election? What things are we actually really concerned about in the communities that we represent?
Is that an open question to anybody?
Well, the three panelists I have, or four.
So say the question again. What should we be looking for?
What things are we concerned about in our communities?
We concerned about economic justice. We're concerned about educational justice. We're concerned about civic justice, judicial justice. We're concerned about housing justice. We're concerned about justice.
Justice, okay.
Equality.
Okay.
I agree with that. And I also believe we got to be concerned about the pre-existing conditions that have brought about all of these disparities in our communities. Man, we have had pre-existing conditions, but they didn't come to light until March 17th.
Amen.
Wow. Yeah.
We've always had housing issues in our communities, but they didn't come to light until March 17th when we was on shutdown orders.
Yeah, redlining started a long time ago, didn't it?
A long time ago. So what ends up happening, they talking about, well, you can't have 5, 7, 8, 10 people in a house. Well, that may be all somebody have.
Yeah.
Right.
So when we begin to start looking at these different disparities, we've had pre-existing conditions all along. I mean, we've always had the battle with insurance. So that's why many of our people have not went and got a COVID test, because when they get to the line and get ready to get tested, somebody gonna ask them, well, do you have a copay?
Yeah.
So that comes from educating. Make sure we educate people on where they can get a free test from.
That's where it comes in at.
I did an op-ed at the early with this COVID, and actually you can find it on our Action Fund site. And that's when the city of Chicago, they noticed that there was a high level of African Americans dying from COVID. And I just basically did an op-ed saying I wasn't surprised with what we already knew that existed in our communities, with lack of resources, lack of access to healthcare, food deserts that exist in our community. It was no surprise to me that once people started dying, African Americans were dying at a disproportionate rate.
Hey, Pastor Onqué, can you hear me now?
Okay, I got you
Well,
now.
right there.
All right.
What's up, brother?
Watkins.
Boy, it was a hard time getting in on here, boy. I tell you. So let me just say, I know we're coming to a close, and let me just say I'm honored and privileged to be on with this distinguished and dynamic panel that you have here, these esteemed group of preachers. Let me just say a few things about the necessity of why we should vote and what happens when we don't vote. I hope that's not me dialing in. I see somebody dialing in. I hope that's not.
No, that's good.
Okay, just want to make sure that we understand that there's severe consequences when we don't vote. And so what we see when we don't vote is that's not me in the background. What we see, what happens is that there's severe consequences when we don't vote. We see that when we don't go to the polls, we get a person like a 45 in office. how important it is for us to vote is so vitally important. Voting just does not affect the next 4 years, but voting affects the next 40 years. What we've seen with this president that we have in office now, Donald Trump has elected or has the power to appoint people, men and women, to seats who sit on the Supreme Court, Appellate Court, the District Court. He has
That's right.
appointed and has placed 198 people, men and women, in those judicial seats and as judges, whether he had people on the district appellate, and now he just put in 2 people on the Supreme Court. That's going to change the landscape of our country for not just the next 4 years. We have to understand how this is going to affect us for the next 40 years. And so that's why there's consequences when we don't go to the poll. There's also not just consequences, but we got to keep in mind when people say they're not voting, what they're doing also is they're giving up their voice. They're saying that my voice does not matter. And we as clergy, as pastors, as presidents of organization must make that clarion call and let people know that your vote matter, your voice matter. And that's why whether we're standing in line for 2 minutes or 2 hours, if we can stand in line for hours to get Popeye's chicken sandwich, you sure enough can stand in line to cast your vote. I ain't got nobody that's gonna help
That's
me.
right. That's right.
Today. I know it ain't Sunday, but I'm preaching. Y'all won't
I'm
help.
gonna say amen. I'm gonna say amen.
I'm gonna say amen too.
So it's our voice that we lose. We give up our voice when we don't vote, and people need to understand that. But then thirdly, I want to say that it's a disrespect to those who lost their lives, who fought for the Voter Rights Act, who went across the bloody Sunday, the people who were lynched. Because when you don't vote, what you're saying is what they did for us to
Don't
get
matter.
where we are today didn't matter. You're showing a disrespect to your past, but you're also showing a disrespect to your future, because now when you don't vote, you're affecting not just your children, but your children's children. And so we have a lot that's at stake. And so, like you mentioned earlier, not only are we voting for the president, but we got to take our time and educate our people about these judges that are sitting on the seat. Keep this in mind, that most of our people are going to see a judge before they see an elected official like a state rep or a senator that's going to Washington. We're going to have people standing in front of the judge that's going to determine whether or not they get 2 days in jail or whether or not they get 20 years in jail. And we have to deal with that. We have to deal with that effect, that it affects not only that person that's in our membership in our church, but it affects their whole family. And that comes back to us. And so that's why we have to play a vital role with this election piece. That's it.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And again, the historical perspective, we don't want to disrespect those that have come before us who suffer so much for the right to vote. And that's why voting is definitely a privilege. It's the greatest privilege you can get as a citizen of these United States, is your right to go and vote and select who you would like to represent you, because your voice does matter. All right. Well, we're going to do a quick roundtable with our last few minutes because we like to start on time and end on time here at Faith in Place. And so, again, I'm going to go around and I'm going to start with you, Pastor Jones, on just give me something to remind those that are here. And again, this is being recorded, so you will be able to grab a hold of this and share it with your membership just in case they missed it. But again, give me a charge to share with our listeners about voting.
Okay, not to be disobedient, before I do that, they said Sunday had been the last day to register online. Now, folks, to register have to go where?
Pastor Rutledge, are you still on?
Yes, I'm still here. Yes,
Okay,
I'm
the
here.
question is,
I'm
where do you go to vote to register? I mean, where do you go to register to vote?
Well, the last day to, I'm trying to
person.
look at my list here. I'm looking at my list, but anyway, I think we still have some online actually online time, but they can also go to the early voting site and on election day. We talked about that they can register on election day, but remember that is our last chance. You can't go in there without your credentials. So you have to have those. And I want to say before we get around, let's not forget immediately after this election, we're getting ready to get ready for our election. This election right behind us that is very, very important to the county and the state. So we need to, it's just not a one thing. That's what happens. So many of us say, well, I'm going to vote in the presidential. And it's almost like you don't care about the ones where you live at. You got to vote all the time.
All the time. Every election. Very good.
Every election.
So Dr. Rutledge, this is Pastor Jones. Listen, again, hey, brother, good to hear your voice. But listen,
You too.
I can't say see your face because I don't see it. But let me say this. So since they can't do the early online right now, other than going there on that date when they get ready to vote, bring the information, where can they go to register early before that now?
Well, none of that is. I think we wrapped up all of that.
Okay, we're done.
The only thing. Because we had what you call grace period registration, grace period voting. Then we had the last day to register online. The last day was the other day. So now all they can do is to go to their polling places or to the early voting place to register.
With their credentials.
With their credentials. They remember, it's 2 pieces of ID. They don't have to be picture ID. They can be a piece of mail and old ID, but it has to have your present address on it. That's the kick. One piece must have where you're living at now.
Okay, good. So you heard, everyone heard that. You 2 pieces of identification, one being with your current address on it in order for you to qualify to vote. And then they will allow you to actually vote at that same time, correct?
Yes, you will vote a regular ballot. Now, if you have to vote provisionally, remember that is something that we have to fix with your present registration. So there will be, like, say, if you come in and you don't have the ballot that we mailed you, they're going to let you vote provisionally because we want to make sure you're not trying to vote twice.
Okay, great. Before we have our last comments, let me say this. I meant to talk about this. We've heard around the country about possible voter intimidation. And Pastor Rutledge, what's the best way to handle if you encounter voter intimidation when you get to the polls?
Well, here's the first thing. In Cook County, we do not deal with police. We deal with the county sheriff. We do not tolerate that. But remember where we live, what county we live in. They will try you and they will intimidate you. They will scare you. But at that time, you need to let one official know or stop someone and say, hey, I'm having a problem. We will have a county sheriff and an attorney there within 15 to 20 minutes to deal with the situation. And it's going to happen. It's going to happen. If you don't have to take that. Sometimes you may have it on the inside, it may be on the outside, but we are prepared to handle it, period. I have to say that about Cook County. We don't play about our elections here. We do what we have to do.
Okay.
To make it safe for the people. And then also, I've had problems where we've had complaints where the seniors did not want to go in because of the gang standing around. We can't do nothing about it if you don't tell us.
Okay. All right.
But
good.
when we see it, we stop it. And I happen to be by myself, I guess, one of the ones that always get the trouble spots. But we don't tolerate that. We go in ready to deal with the problem.
All right. Thank you, Pastor. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right. We have exactly 9 minutes. And so that gives us a couple minutes. And I really want to hear from these distinguished panelists before we leave out. I don't see any questions in the chat. So again, I'm going to drop it to you, Pastor Jones, and then Pastor Turner, and then Pastor Watkins with our final comments. Pastor
All
Jones.
right. I'm going to try to be brief and quick.
Okay.
I got some of my members are on this call, so they know my position regarding voting. So I just want to put it out to everybody else. Your voice matters. I don't care what nobody else tell you. Don't let nobody tell you that your vote ain't gonna count. Vote anyway. Vote like your life depends on it, because it does.
Thank you, Dr. Jones.
Yeah.
Henry Mitchell, in his book, Henry Mitchell wrote a book entitled Black Church Beginning. And in his book, Black Church Beginning, he talked about during the time when every pastor, during slavery time, every pastor changed or transformed their pulpits into a platform of abolitionists. They used their pulpits to help end slavery. I'm appealing to pastors right now. It is time for us to end this madness of slavery.
Amen.
Because our people have been enslaved for far too long, for 401 years of these various pre-existing conditions. We must now begin to learn how to reimagine what social justice and healthcare and all of these different platforms of injustices, we must reimagine of how they gonna look like after November 3rd.
Well, let me just say, after 150 years, after the passage of the 15th Amendment, Black America still faces massive disparities and inequities. We see General Iron coming from the north side, coming to the south side. We saw it taking place in Flint, Michigan, where we saw environmental racism. We saw it in Louisiana and Texas, where we saw the cancer alley. And now we're seeing the tales of two cities here in the city of Chicago. Voting matters, and we have to vote as if our life depends on it. And so when we talk about educating our people, it's imperative that we educate them not to just go in and vote for the president, but they have to understand that we have to vote for the vice president. They have to understand not only do we have to vote for the vice president, but we have to vote for the U.S. Senate. We got to vote for the U.S. House of Representatives. We have to vote for our Illinois legislators. We have to vote for our Cook County positions, in addition to our Cook County State's Attorney position. Again, I can't stress enough how many of our people stand in front of these judges and these attorneys, and we don't take the time to go down the ballot and vote for these judges. And so that's why we have to educate our people when it comes to these judges, because once they're elected, it's hard to get them out of that seat once they're in that seat. And so we want to make sure that we do our due diligence in educating our people. And when the pastor just talked about slavery, it was Harriet Tubman who said it best. I would have freed a lot more if they only knew that they was in slavery.
If they was in slavery.
We got a whole lot of our people that don't even know that they're enslaved. So we got a lot that we got a lot at stake, and we have a lot that we may end up losing if we don't get our people to the polls.
Wonderful, thank you. Pastor Rutledge, again, thank you for being our resident expert tonight. Do you have anything you would like to share about before we leave tonight?
Well, one thing that I just want to add, let's not forget those of us that are deputy registrars this year, November the 30th, we will be redeputizing you. In other words, we will recommission you. Let's not forget that, because that is one of the ways that they really get us on when we go to register people. And then we find out that our credentials are not right. So November the 30th, 2020, all you have to do is sign another commission slip, and you're good for the next 2 years. Let's not forget that. That is so important.
Great. Thank you for that reminder.
Is my slip going to come in the mail, or do I have to send for it?
I'm going to make sure you get one.
Listen, inside our chat, and we've heard this from all of the pastors tonight about the importance of advocating or being an advocate. We have a virtual advocacy day coming up. I want you to click on that link and register your people for that advocacy day. That is vitally important. We want to make sure that our voices are heard in Springfield. We want to make sure our governor knows how we feel about clean energy legislation. And so we're going to participate in this virtual Advocacy Day. At this moment, we are actually setting up town halls with your state representatives and your state senators so that you can participate in a town hall and you can ask them questions on how they stand on clean energy and in questions on what's their position on things like a general iron. And so these are the times that we want to hold our elected officials accountable for their current position. So please click on that link so you'll be a part of that great forum, which is going to happen on November the 12th. Again, thank you to these distinguished pastors. I really, really appreciate the work that all of you do. I chose you purposely because I know you're about the business. There's certain people about the talk, but there's others that are about the business. And we're in the business of educating our people on how important it is to make sure that they understand we are voting like our lives depended on it, because really our lives are literally dependent on the outcome of this election. And so again, thank you for all you do and how you share with your community, share with your congregations to make sure they're educated. And again, this will be available on the Faith in Places website so they can go back and look at it and hear the comments that we've made during this very productive hour. We're going to end now. And so my pledge to you is that I'm praying for you. And again, God bless you and God keep you and may heaven shine upon you is my prayer. All right, everybody have a good night. Thank you again. Bye now.
Bless you. Bye now.